This podcast is made possible by the listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's October 18th, 2024. I'm Tony Gonzalez in for Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. We're less than 20 days out from Election Day on November 5th. In newsrooms, elections are usually marked by late nights, stress, excitement, and a whole lot of pizza. So today, I thought I'd take a minute to bring you inside our plan for covering this year's elections. Our reporters are keeping a close eye on both state house and national races this year. Plus, our Metro reporter, Cynthia Abrams, is extensively covering the transit referendum on the ballot. On Election Day, you might see one of several reporters out speaking to voters at polling places. We'll also have live special coverage after polls close on air on 90.3. You'll hear from reporters at watch parties, both locally and across the country, and we'll bring you the latest results as they come in that night. We will also be updating a live blog at WPLN.org that will have the results of all the races as they're called by the Associated Press once they are a sure thing. But if you need more information right now to help you make an informed decision or even to find an early voting polling place, you can head over to WPLN.org/elections to find all of our coverage. And of course, on November 6th, we'll have a brand new edition of the Nashvillager Podcast with the latest bright and early. In just a few minutes, we'll hear from some civically engaged Nashvillians who aren't yet old enough to vote. That's coming up after the newscast. Here's the mantra I think about at WPLN. We connect the dots. It captures a mindset that our journalism is not merely about the latest press release or proclamations by officials. Instead, we can develop expertise, dig deeper, and look to history to understand what's happening now. I'm Tony Gonzalez, news director. When I'm planning coverage and editing stories, the best part is being part of a team that's curious about our community and invested in its future. For WPLN News in Nashville, I'm Tony Gonzalez. Tennessee's abortion ban has exceptions for medical emergencies, but physicians and legal experts argue the law is dangerously vague. A state court issued an order late Thursday afternoon agreeing that doctors and patients need more clarity. It said law enforcement isn't allowed to prosecute health workers who perform abortions in specific situations, like when the patient has a life-threatening blood pressure condition called severe preeclampsia, or an infection that threatens future fertility. A little over a year ago, a group of patients and doctors filed a lawsuit challenging the state's medical exception policy. The patients had been refused medically necessary emergency abortions, and the doctors argued they couldn't adequately treat their patients for fear of going to prison. The challengers made several requests, and that included a temporary block on prosecution when the abortion patients had certain conditions. In the Thursday decision, the court said yes to the temporary block, while it continues considering the case. The Metro Arts Commission is rethinking how it will handle grants this year. The commission had announced plans to cancel the current grant funding cycle for artists and arts nonprofits. Last year's grant-making went so dramatically wrong that some board members and staff wanted a year to overhaul the process. But this week, the Metro Arts Commission announced it will give out grant money this fiscal year. WPLN's Char Daston has more.
Commissioner Tim Jester says he's heard loud and clear from the arts community.
A couple of months ago, we talked about the potential of canceling grant applications and starting over again. And I want to acknowledge publicly that we heard overwhelmingly that would be the wrong thing to do.
Metro Arts has another reason to change its plans. Its lawyer says because the agency has a grants budget this year, it's obligated by the city to give out that money. But several steps remain. A funding formula and scoring procedure needs approval from Metro Legal as well as input from the community. A plan for the Thrive program, which funds individual artists and projects, needs to go through the same process. Finally, the Metro Arts Board, and then Metro Council, must sign off on both plans. It's unclear how long all these steps will take. On top of that, Metro Arts says grant payments will be at most half as much as they were last year, due to a smaller pot of money and more applicants than ever. Char Daston, WPLN News.
There's an impasse in Nashville over one of the city's efforts to find housing for people who are moving out of homeless encampments. At issue is a Metro contract with the Salvation Army, which has been helping manage rooms at a former motel that was turned into transitional housing. The city has been steadily clearing camps and moving people to the former roadway in South Nashville. This week, leaders with the Office of Homeless Services told the Metro Council the Salvation Army is backing out of its role, despite receiving an additional city grant. But the nonprofit tells the Nashville Banner that the city is mistaken and that the grant it received is for services unrelated to the transitional motel. In the meantime, the owner of the motel says she's been keeping dozens of rooms vacant in anticipation of a new wave of residents, and she's still willing to house people. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee made waves in early 2023 when he rejected millions of dollars in federal HIV prevention programming. Since then, the state has been replacing that money, but that new process is already causing damage, according to public health experts, and models show this could mean more infections and more deaths in the long term. WPLN's health reporter Catherine Sweeney has the latest.
Here are a couple things we're already seeing. It's harder to retain workers when they don't know if their jobs will disappear. That's one of Imna Osman's concerns. She's the CEO of Nashville Cares, an agency that both offers HIV prevention services as well as oversees funding for other Middle Tennessee organizations. She sees the struggle some agencies have with staffing.
There's no sustainable grant funding to support these positions, and, employees really want some stability.
That's because it used to be federal grants funded Tennessee's programming for 5 years at a time. But the funding cycle is only 1 year now that the state is paying for the program. And lawmakers can cut that funding in a year. Osman says that even before funding changed, community surveys found that about a third of people who need PrEP, a medicine that protects against HIV, don't know where to get it. Now it's even worse.
Well, I'm hearing there's no dollars for prevention education, for HIV. Then that means I think there's no money for me to get a service. And so people then, don't know where to go.
The Tennessee Department of Health issued a statement which said its own oversight is more efficient than the federal government's. Critics cite other problems, like Tennessee's plan to move investment away from traditional high-risk groups, like men who have sex with men, and instead focus on new priority groups, first responders, pregnant people, and sex trafficking survivors. That priority shift is the focus of a white paper published in the journal Clinical Infectious Diseases. Traditional high-risk groups account for 99% of Tennessee's current HIV cases. The authors of the study project that Tennessee's disinvestment in those high-risk groups could cause 190 additional deaths in the state over the next decade. Catherine Sweeney, WPLN News.
Nashville Cares is hosting its 33rd annual AIDS Walk and 5K run this Saturday at Shelby Park in East Nashville. Tennessee homes have become progressively less affordable over the past decade. In the last few months, prices have gone down, but that's relative. Since January 2021, median sales prices have increased by 44%, according to a new report from Middle Tennessee State University. The short-term gains in affordability are primarily being felt in West Tennessee, while Middle Tennessee remains the least affordable part of the state. Middle Tennessee is the only region where the median sales price is higher than the U.S. average. The ultimate career goal for music star performers is a Hall of Fame. The induction ceremonies for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Country Music Hall of Fame are both happening this weekend. Senior music writer Julie Height considers the inductees side by side.
On Saturday in Cleveland, a tribe called Quest, Kool and the Gang, and Dionne Warwick get their Rock Hall due. And so does Peter Frampton. The British rock shredder has called Nashville home off and on since the mid-90s. He found a signature talkbox sound, making his guitar like a human voice, through previous Country Hall inductee Pete Drake. One group going into the Rock Hall is Dave Matthews Band, whose saxophonist Jeff Coffin lives here and teaches at Vanderbilt's Blair School of Music. Another honoree with Nashville roots is the late Jimmy Buffett, who initially pursued a country career before influencing country with his beach escape style. Then on Sunday evening in Nashville, the Country Music Hall of Fame's medallion ceremony will be a more intimate affair in every way, a celebration specifically of contributions to the genre and industry community of country music. Guitarist James Burton, who played with Rock Hall inductees like Elvis Presley, will be honored for developing country's percussive chicken-picking guitar style. Tribute will be paid to John Anderson for the bluesy singing and wry, rollicking songs that brought him hits in the 80s and early 90s. From then until the 2010s, his fellow inductee, the late Toby Keith, scored country hits with red-blooded bravado and fierce self-determination in the business. While a posthumous induction isn't uncommon, it's rare that the one who's passed is the youngest in the class. Julie Height, Nashville Public Radio.
You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. Some young people across Tennessee may not be old enough to vote yet, but many are still eager and already participating in civic life. From starting a nonprofit to working with lawmakers, Nashville students are helping to shape their communities. Several of those change makers shared what they've been up to with WPLN's daily show, This is Nashville. Producer Catherine Cece's has this feature.
High school students in Nashville are joining together and working hard to make the change they believe in a reality here in Tennessee. Local high school senior Aaron has spent years participating in the Model United Nations and Youth in Government programs through the YMCA. Learning about how the legislature works inspired her to help get a state law passed.
I worked with a team of 4 other high school students, 3 of whom participated in the Tennessee Youth in Government program, to create a law with Senator Heidi Campbell requiring high schools to send students emails with voter registration procedure, because even though election commissions are required by law to come to every school and help with the voter registration process, many students can fall through the cracks. They could be absent. They could have a free period during the window where the election commission is there. So we wanted something that would be sort of a fail-safe and provide really easy access to voter registration directly from the schools.
High schoolers are also helping their communities at a more local level. Nashville senior Khalid is a member of the Nashville Mayor's Youth Council. He got involved in service his sophomore year after witnessing the living conditions of his unhoused neighbors.
I see a lot of people on sidewalks in downtown Nashville, and sometimes you see them even rummaging in trash for their finding a meal. And I wanted to find a way to give them a fresh, clean meal that they could rejuvenate themselves with.
So Khalid went to the Secretary of State and filed the papers to create an official nonprofit. He went on to get other students from several schools involved.
We just drafted students to come volunteer, and we just bike around downtown Nashville giving prepackaged snacks and water to the homeless.
Some high schoolers are helping their peers across the state connect with the lawmaking process. Activist and senior Brendan founded Students for Education, an organization that encourages students to vote and to reach out to their legislators. He says the idea came from a video he saw as a freshman.
It was just talking about the state of the American education system. And, that was kind of the first moment where I realized, maybe the level of education quality in this state and in this country is, not the same. So started researching. I got really into policy, and kind of coinciding with the Covenant tragedy, realized that students aren't included in the conversation.
Brendan's organization now has 17 chapters across the state and has branched out into topics that impact people outside of the classroom.
And so we started meeting with legislators, Metro Council people, and started to come to the understanding that our voices have power, but more than that, they have utility. The ideas we bring to the table are new, they're a different perspective, and for as many times as you'll hear people say that they want to hear from a different perspective, that's never really meant students.
These seniors head out to college soon, but many of them plan to return to Tennessee and continue the work they've started here. Catherine Cece's WPLN News.
You can find the full conversation with the teens on the This Is Nashville podcast feed. Thanks for listening to the Nash Villager podcast. We take this look at Nashville news every weekday. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend, or give us a mention on your social media. It really helps to get the word out. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can become a member at WPLN.org. Thanks so much for listening.